Showing on this episode of Law Weekly highlights from the celebration of the 60th Call to Bar anniversary of legal icon Afe Babalola in Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti State. From there, we move to Lagos, where the Chief Judge has freed 30 inmates from some correctional centers in Lagos and Ogun State. Birthing a new Nigeria, role of the judiciary, security agencies and the media in a democratic society takes center stage at the 2023 annual lecture of the National Association of Judicial Correspondents, NAJUC, chaired by a retired Justice of the Federal High Court, Justice Taiwo Taiwo. Plus a recap of some of the top trending legal stories in the news. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Shola Shieli. The cream of the legal profession and other important dignitaries converged on the Afe Babalola University, Abuad, in Ado-Ekiti in honor of the founder and legal icon, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Afe Babalola, OFR-CON, as he celebrated the 60th anniversary of his call to the bar. Issues of constitutionalism and the imperative of a new constitutional order took center stage.
One of the most frustrating things for me in looking at the history of Nigeria's struggle with constitutionalism is the process itself of making a constitution. I found that the struggle to represent traditional rulers, to represent the church, to represent all kinds of aggregate groups ends up with a lot of people with very little understanding of what constitution making is. And what became very clear to me that most of the people who showed up saw the place as a theater for politicking and political transaction. The second point is to look at the state of Nigeria itself. Do we resemble a democracy? Do we work like a democracy? Do we talk like a democracy? Because the very fact that up till now, months after our elections and after swearing in a president, we still don't know who is going to be the president of Nigeria until the Supreme Court is over. Very much akin to the introduction of the video assistant referee in football, in which case we are like a man who has scored a goal, but we have to wait for the referee to go to VAR and confirm whether it was a goal or not a goal. If we cannot fix our electoral process, which is the defining law for how to choose leaders in a democracy, then we must be modest in our saying that we are in a democracy. Secondly, our judiciary is in a crisis of perception, but also based on the experiences that Nigerians have had. It will not be surprising if ordinary Nigerians think that the only thing the Supreme Court does is to look at election petitions. Because we're looking up to the Supreme Court to help extend the frontiers of democracy and human freedoms. But very often, those institutions with Nigerians perceive that they've now become so severely compromised. That has consequences for democracy and how we see the process of democratization. We now have an opportunity to rebuild our country. And no matter what happens, how the Supreme Court ends, how things end in Nigeria, I'm convinced that we have put the past, the ugly past, behind us.
A panel of discussants, moderated by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Niyi Akintola, also took turns to give their insights on the lecture delivered by the Bishop.
My Lord Bishop, I'm saying that the ugly past is not behind us at all. Because today, the level of corruption in Nigeria has assumed a very dangerous dimension. We have a situation where highly placed public officers steal money meant for building hospitals, and people are dying on our roads. They steal money meant for ecology, to fight erosion, to deforest certain part of the country. So when a country gets to that stage, corruption is now a crime against humanity. Therefore, I'm urging the president to lead an anti-corruption crusade so that this country, the largest concentration of black people on earth, can take its rightful place in the Committee of Nations.
I'm a professor of international law, so I always like to ask, where does Nigeria stand in the League of Nations? The 2023 Global Rule of Law Index ranks Nigeria as 118 out of 140 countries in terms of rule of law. which is dangerously low. And one of the key factors is what is described as lack of constitutional legitimacy. Constitutional legitimacy is about two things: the process through which the Constitution came to being in the first place, and the product itself. Process and product. The 1999 Constitution was put together in 155 days by the Honorable Justice Nikitobi Committee. But if the 1999 Constitution were to be standing in front of us today as a human being, it is a human being that has gone through 50 stitches. It is not healthy. The 1999 Constitution is a badly flawed document that does not represent the wish of the people. And I think if we really want to make progress as a country, we need to listen carefully to what Afe Babalola has been saying for years: the need to restructure.
Women have not been treated fairly at all since the inception of democracy in Nigeria. And we have had cause to speak out, to cry, to present bills, but it has been from one poor state to a poorer state. Look at the present National Assembly. At the last National Assembly, there are about 10 at the Senate out of 109 senators. Now, as I speak, there are only 3 women at the Senate of Nigeria. At the House of Representatives, there are only 10 or 11 women out of 360 people there. So how have we fared when the Constitution of Nigeria guarantees equality, indiscrimination, and gives equal treatment to men and women?
The chairman of the event, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who also doubled as the chairman of the panel, had this to say.
Bishop Kuka made very cogent and valid points. That then, to get good governance, it will depend on those who are operating your constitution and who are managing your democracy. And that is very important. And the point in Nigeria, which I have seen, which I can attest to, is most of the people who are supposed to be operationalizing or managing and seeing the Constitution and democracy move forward, they are actually the ones who undermine Constitution and democracy.
And the man at the center of it all, the celebrant, again took the opportunity to reiterate his age-long call for a new and truly federal constitution.
It is true that people who make government are the people who run the government. But it's also true that you cannot have a constitution which can be run by even an angel when that constitution is for a country of nations. Nigeria is not one country. It's a country of more than 300 nations and tribes. You need a new constitution which will allow each part to develop at its own rate. And at the same time, a nation will now evolve from that constitution. If a Niger comes to this country today, he cannot run this country well because of the constitution we have. It's not possible. So my own suggestion is that we need a new constitution immediately, and that constitution must be similar to the one which the leaders, in their own wisdom, after 10 years of deliberation in London, agreed to, which was a true federal constitution with regional bias. And finally, I want to speak about my own profession, the judiciary. Our judiciary today needs a total overhaul. And you cannot do it without a new constitution. I have about 3 cases myself
filed in respect of matters arising from the university. Do you know for the past 4 years, these cases have been on. We have some judges here. The High Court has not been able to sit for many months. Why? Because they are handling what they call election petitions. Election petitions should not be handled by sitting judges. They should be decided only by committee set up consisting of senior advocates and retired judges. In that case, the regular court will not close down. That's my first observation. The second observation, of course, is remuneration of judges. No senior advocate who is worth its salt, who is making money the way I did, who want to go and apply to become a judge. For what? What the judges in Nigeria earn, split terms, compared with others and overseas. There is urgent need under the new constitution to improve the salaries of judges.
Apart from the issues discussed, legal practitioners in their numbers also poured encomiums on the celebrants.
Honestly, Daddy is just a unique man, admirable, he's done so much. And I think for the children, it's the philanthropic acts that he has done that we would pray we can continue to emulate. I don't know anyone that has done as much as he has. The Afe Babalola University is a testament of who Daddy is and what he's done. He likes to give. You can't come to him without getting an envelope. He's just a generous man to a fault. But we wish him long life. I pray that he will continue with all his dreams. He dreams big and he's been an achiever. My grandmother died at 124, so I believe Daddy will live long. I believe he will still live for another 20 years to continue this dream of giving back, giving back. Education is his passion. We love him and we wish him all the very best.
He's such a great man, and I'm privileged to have learnt under him, to work with him. You know, I wouldn't say work under him, because he's always treated us as, you know, his partners and as equals, and he's always allowed us to flourish. This is one man that no matter how high you grow, he wants you to grow larger, and he's never felt uncomfortable or threatened by any other person's success around him. In fact, it tells you that you can be greater than him. That's his first prayer for you every time you have an encounter with him, every time you meet him. So it was a wonderful privilege to be part of this 60th Call to Bar celebrations. I'm hopeful that when he's 65, when he's 70, will still be around, and we'll be able to celebrate him even larger than this.
I'm a graduate of his university, so I finished about 6-7 years ago. Just because I studied in this university, when I applied for my first job after my NYC, and they said, "Oh, what school did you go to?" And I said, "Afe Babalola University." The interview changed. The conversation moved from what are my skill sets to them asking questions about my interactions with the founder and things like that. And they said, okay, we've heard from you, we'll get back to you. And I got a job. And I'm sure, and then when I resumed, the managing partner said, "Oh, that Aria and myself are good friends. And I'm sure that since you're a product of his university, you will have all the required technical competence and skill set and even the character required to work here." It was so great of a time that when I was leaving the firm, they didn't want to leave. You know, they were trying to amend the packages and say, "You stay back here after you leave." Now, in addition to that, when I started my own firm and I walk into rooms and meet people and try and solicit or win briefs for the firm, and then they ask me, "Why should we give you, our work? I mean, you're still young at the bar," and things like that. And they say, "Okay, what did you even finish from?" And I say, "Oh, Afe Babalola University." They say, "Oh, really? You're Baba's son? Oh, okay." And then even recently, I just landed a very interesting transaction in the oil and gas industry. And the MD of the company said, "I believe that because you are a product of Abuad, you have, the kind of brain that Baba has." Those were the MD's words. And because of that, I would trust you with this work. We did the first work for him, and then he granted us a retainer with the firm.
The revered legal doyen and educationist Afe Babalola had the privilege of being admitted to the Bar of England and Wales on July 9, 1963. An advocate par excellence, Afe Babalola has made outstanding contributions to Nigerian law and jurisprudence through his excellent advocacy in court and by authoring several law books. He's also trained over 1,000 lawyers, produced 25 senior advocates of Nigeria, the largest by any law firm in the country, including several attorneys general at the federal and state levels, as well as judges up to the appellate courts. In recognition of his immense contributions to making the world a better place, he has been conferred with over 50 titles and awards across the globe, including Honorary Doctor of Laws and Doctor of Letters from 10 universities, including the University of London. The legal icon also holds the prestigious national honors as the Officer of the Federal Republic (OFR) and Commander of the Order of the Niger (CON). Thanks for staying tuned. The Chief Judge of Lagos State, Justice Kazeem Alugba, has released 30 inmates from the custody of the correction centers in Lagos and Ogun States. We have details up next.
Judges, magistrates of the Lagos State Judiciary, lawyers, human rights advocates, officials of the correction centers, representatives of non-governmental organizations, and many others are gathered here for the decongestion of the custodial centers exercise of 2023 held at the Justice Samuel Ilori Courthouse, Ogba. The Chief Judge of Lagos State is flanked by other judges of the court and the representatives of the Controller of the Nigerian Correction Service.
We have almost 9,000 locked up in our facility today, almost 9,000. And I pray and I say that the Chief Judge will use his good office and ensure that all those that needed, that are qualified to ensure that the facilities are decongested, are really giving this privilege.
The congestion of prison should be a continuous exercise because we cannot just continue keeping people there. 9,000 for a facility that's only meant for about 1,500 is highly unbearable. But nevertheless, we still need to do more. We need to talk to ourselves, to talk to our siblings, to talk to our wards on how to live within the confinement of the law so that they are not going to be found wanting. Those that are there, I hope those that are going to be released today must have learned one or two lessons that will not take them back to crime and criminality again.
The Chief Judge says the decongestion exercise is in pursuance to the powers conferred on him under Section 1, Subsection 1 of the Criminal Justice Release from Custody Special Provision Act 24, February 2022, and provisions of Administration of Criminal Justice Law 2019 of Lagos State.
This exercise is not, as it were, a Father Christmas exercise. It's an exercise which we have to carry out as mandated by the relevant laws. What we're doing today, really, I must admit, is an indication of systemic failure. There will have been no reason to have to do this kind of exercise if cases had been going on promptly in courts. Cases have not been going on promptly in court, not because the magistrates or judges were not sitting, but because of so many ancillary factors, which are collateral to the progress and progression of disposition of cases in the courts. And so the exercise we are about witnessing today is in answer to that self-cleansing provision in the system to ensure that at least justice is seen to be done to everybody, and no person, even if alleged to have committed an offense, is incarcerated without justification for a day longer than the person should be behind bars.
About 30 inmates were released from the custody of the correction centers in Lagos and Ogun States. Those granted freedom included 4 young boys from Adigbe Foster Home, Ogun State, who were minors at the time they committed the offense for which they were arrested. Some of them have been in prison custody since 2013 before they were granted freedom.
The fact is that the correctional facility is an opportunity for an offender to rehabilitate himself, to pay for the crime that has been committed, and upon release, all the records are made clean.
Nigeria's democracy depends, among other things, on a strong judiciary, the media, and security agencies. Participants at the 2023 annual lecture of the National Association of Judicial Correspondents, NAJUC, made this suggestion at an event which had the theme, Birthing a New Nigeria, Role of the Judiciary, Security Agencies, and the Media in a Democratic Society. Birthing a new Nigeria, one that is critical to the continued survival and progress of the country and its people, is a topic that should interest everyone. And it is what has brought us justice, senior advocates of Nigeria, representatives of security agencies, and members of the media together in this hall, especially as it concerns their various roles. It's the 2023 annual lecture of the National Association of Judicial Correspondents, chaired by a retired Justice of the Federal High Court, Justice Taiwo. The guest speaker and patron of the association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Abiodun Olatunji, traces the role of all these critical actors.
The judiciary, security agencies, and the media are the springboard, lifeblood of any society, and are instrumental to its success or otherwise. The recently concluded 2023 general election has further placed more responsibility on the plate of judiciary, security agencies, and the media by ensuring the Nigerian project does not capsize, and it shall not capsize by God's grace. Amen. For instance, the judiciary is once again under the spotlight as 436 election petitions to be handled by 257 judges have been filed by 10 of the 18 political parties at the various election tribunals in 27 states of the country to quash victories of those the INEC declared as the winners. The judiciary has a critical role to play, as the decision delivered by our tribunal in this petition dictate for our appellate courts will neither make or mar our already fragile democracy.
In a similar vein, the guest speaker highlighted the role of the media as well as security agencies and concluded that what the nation needs to survive are not strong persons, but strong and stable institutions. The chairman of the event agrees. He also speaks on other issues raised.
When you pull about 257 judges out of the system to attend to election matters, who are now left to sit on the cases of the common men or the other cases that are not election petition. Why must election petition be so important to the fact that you withdraw so many judges, serving judges, out of the system?
Something that we should all bear in mind is that there is no, or I'm not aware of any other government than a democratic government. There will be blunders here and there, but as we allow democracy to linger, you find out that we'll get better and better.
And just before we go, let's quickly do a recap of some of the top trending stories from the courtrooms.
We begin with the report that the Presidential Election Petition Court has reserved judgment in the petition by the Allied People's Movement, APM. APM is seeking the nullification of President Tinubu's election on the grounds that his running mate, Kashim Shettima, was not qualified to contest, having allegedly engaged in double nomination. After parties adopted their final written addresses, the chairman of a panel, Justice Haruna Samani, announced that judgment was reserved until a date to be communicated to parties. Justice Samani added that the court plans to deliver judgment in the petition by the APM the same day with those of the People's Democratic Party and Labour Party. The Department of State Services, DSS, says it has charged suspended Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, to court. This is sequel to an Abuja High Court order of Thursday, July the 13th, 2023, that the secret police charge Mr. Emefiele to court within 1 week or release him. Law Weekly gathered that the charge was filed before a federal high court sitting in Lagos. There are indications that the suit will soon be assigned to a judge. Meanwhile, a federal Capital Territory High Court has voided the arrest and detention of Mr. Emefiele by the DSS. Another federal Capital Territory High Court has dismissed the case against former Governor of Imo State, Senator Rochas Okorocha, by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The court described the EFCC's charge of fraud and abuse of office as an abuse of judicial process. The presiding judge, Justice Yusuf Halilu, premised his judgment on the fact that the EFCC had filed a similar charge against the former Imo State governor at the Federal High Court, which case was decided upon in favor of the former governor in December last year. And we round off with a report that the Federal High Court Abuja has dismissed a fundamental rights enforcement suit filed by the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, against the DSS. Delivering judgment, Justice James Omotosho held that Mr. Kanu's suit lacked merit and ought to be dismissed. Justice Omotosho also held that his case did not relate to torture or forced labor based on the evidence before the court. The judge said a right to dignity was not a right to change clothes as an inmate in a prison, maintaining that the applicant cannot come to court to seek for rights which are not in the Constitution.
And that's the program for today. If you missed any part of it, you can find it in past episodes on our YouTube channel. Do also give us feedback via any of our social media platforms. I'm Shola Shieli. Thank you for watching and see you next week.